You're at the moment in Baku, and yesterday you witnessed a small demonstration in Baku. Could you describe what happened in that demonstration?
Sure. I arrived around 1 p.m. and in front of the public broadcast of Azerbaijan, İktimai TV, and this is the host TV for Eurovision, host broadcaster of Eurovision, as you know. So about a handful of people, I would say about 15, maybe maximum people, around exactly at 1 p.m. Just started opening some posters, getting together. There were about like 100 journalists also gathered there. And as soon as they started unfolding the posters with, calling for greater transparency and greater accountability of public TV, immediately police, without any prior warning, started dispersing them. Not even dispersing, started detaining them violently, grabbing them, dragging them, roughing them up, and stuffing them into a police car. This was all happening in front of all the European journalists and gathered in front of the public TV. The only fault that these people were at was that basically some of them shouted Azadlik, which means freedom in Azerbaijani. And then for the next about 30 or 40 minutes, people, like protesters, kept arriving in pairs or in one, and as soon as they would shout Azadlik, 10 people would grab them, pin them down, stuff them into a car, and take them away. So it was a very surreal thing to watch, because all in front of all those journalists, the authorities did not allow a slightest opportunity of freedom of expression, and immediately cracked down on people who just shouted freedom.
And we've heard that the same happened on Monday, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
On Monday as well, I monitored there in 2 places actually. On Monday there was a demonstration, but in one of the places I observed, at least, police tried to follow some crowd control means. For example, they, obviously, what happened was that when opposition supporters got together, about 100 people, and they marched down like 50 meters and, shouted freedom and, resign and no to corruption and stuff like that. And they got assembled in front of the Baku municipality. Actually, police, after about a minute or two, gave a warning in a loudspeaker saying this is an unsanctioned demonstration, you should disperse. However, immediately, even without giving a chance for people to disperse, immediately attacked them, roughed them up, dragged them away, and stuffed them into police cars and buses, and took them away from the place. But what is important here also to stress why these demonstrations have been unsanctioned, because Azerbaijan has not sanctioned a single opposition or protest demonstration in the city center since 2005. The only 2 ones that were sanctioned in last month were in the outskirts of Baku, far away from the public transportation links. But nevertheless, even if the protests were unsanctioned, as long as they remained peaceful, there was no need for the government to intervene with peaceful expression of protest and crack down on them as they did, on Monday and yesterday, in front of hundreds and dozens of European and local journalists.
So we've heard that the human rights situation has actually deteriorated during the past year, during the time when Azerbaijan has been preparing for hosting the Eurovision Song Contest. In your opinion, is this the case?
I think on a number of issues it has deteriorated, particularly when it comes to freedom of expression. As you probably are aware, there are at least 5 journalists in prison currently in Azerbaijan. 2 other bloggers, 3 human rights defenders, and at least 10 civil and political activists from which were detained last April for participation in peaceful protests. It is a country where a journalist was beaten up in broad daylight by state oil company security officials, and there has not been any accountability for that. In fact, just 2 days ago, I think state oil company published its own understanding of what happened when they beat up the prominent journalist, and they were suggesting that 30 men were defending themselves and acted in self-defense against the journalist who was armed, whose only weapon was a camera and he was holding. So yeah, I mean, this is obviously unacceptable.
Well, all, in terms of human rights, do you think that it's a good thing or that it's a bad thing that the competition, the Eurovision Song Competition, is held in Azerbaijan?
I think it's a great thing that Azerbaijan is hosting such a contest, because obviously the authorities have politicized the event and have used it to show to the world the beauty of Baku and the very rich culture and heritage of Azerbaijan, which is obviously great. However, what also they have not calculated was that Azerbaijan is under immense media spotlight, which meant that journalists were looking beyond the surfaces, beyond the skyscrapers, beyond the glitz and glamour of Eurovision, and it exposed a lot of human rights problems that this country has, which of course would eventually increase the pressure on the authorities to react to them, although their reaction so far has been very inadequate.